Universidad del Valle, Universidad ICESI, Universidad Autónoma de Occidente, Universidad Cooperativa de Colombia, Universidad Javeriana y Universidad Antonio José Camacho. Like all of us make part of this network. What like our motto is building community through English learning and teaching. Please, okay. Be accountable that our mission is this one. The idea is that we want to promote, facilitate, and strengthen with high quality the English learning processes as a foreign language according to the needs of and interests of the universities and the local, regional, national, and international environment. Yes, that's our mission as a network. We have some objectives. Yes, the first one is to exchange knowledge and experiences related to the English learning and teaching processes. We want to encourage cooperation among the universities that are part of the network in order to create events and activities which strengthen the English teaching and the learning processes. We also want to promote the interinstitutional research in order to inquire about the English teaching and learning processes. And it's also very important for us to establish alliances with the binational centers in order to promote the third languages teaching and learning processes as well, okay? As we want to be like communicated, let's say, with you all, these are the communication channels, yes, that we have created. You can follow us in Instagram. You can follow us in Facebook as well. We have an Instagram profile, it's at uelc.network. If you scan the code that I am showing you right now, you can access directly to our profile in Instagram. I kindly ask you to do this, to scan this code and to follow us in Instagram, because later on we will do an activity and you will need to access to that account in the Instagram, okay? We will be using that account today. And also our website, yes, is this one that I have here. I am going to share the links later on also, and we are going to send you the document, yes, that we are using today, so we can have all the information as well, okay? It's very important that you please fill in the attendance. Hadel just sent the link. This is very important because, as you know, we really want to certify your participation. This semester, let's say it's going to be through a letter. Yes, we are not going to do this through a certificate, but it's going to be through a letter, yes, that the Bilingualism Board and the UELC Network and the Chamber of Commerce are going to deliver, okay? This is the attendance link. Yes, Hadel just send it, and let me share with you again. Okay. Also, Hadel, if you are there, yes, I ask you to send it to the attendees, please. Thank you very much. Okay, and this is very important information. Today, from today, you will be able to access to all of the documents, presentations, and all the resources that we have been using in the labs. So this is the link. We will send you the link to, so you can access to all the materials. It's going to be very important because you know that we have shared with you important information, important resources, and important tools that you can use in your classes, okay? So please take this into consideration for you to check it and to remember all the things, all the interesting activities and things that we have done so far, okay? Good, so now that's the information that I wanted to share with you. Remember to follow us in Instagram and Facebook. Do it that right now if you can. And teacher Carlos Alberto Mayora is going to start with the presentation right now. Thank you very much. We will see you in a moment.
Thank you, Yuri. Well, everyone, so while we have this presentation, I will ask you to please keep your microphones off, right? There will be specific points in which I will need you to speak, to answer some questions, to give your opinions. But at that point, I will tell you, so please you raise your hand and I'll give you, you know, like in a class, I'll give you the floor for you to speak. Well, so let's take a brief look at the contents for today. We're going to be talking about assessment, which is one of the critical aspects of language teaching. We will start talking about the basics of assessment, some concepts, classifications, and very important, the principles of assessment. After that, we're going to review a little bit of summative assessment, and we will emphasize how to create tests and quizzes with Google Forms and some tools that you can use to create online rubrics. Then we will talk about formative assessment. We will emphasize e-portfolios and continued observation of learning. And at the end, we will have some minutes for final reflections for discussion about the challenges and opportunities that technology offers to teachers in the assessment of learning. Yuri, can we see the next slide, please? Thank you. So in order to have some context, our wider area of work is going to be teaching. Within teaching, we're going to find evaluation. Within evaluation, we're going to find assessment. And within assessment, we're going to have different options, at least two, but there might be many more. So when we talk about evaluation, we are talking about making judgments about the effectiveness of or the quality of a language program or a teaching program, okay? When we evaluate all of the curriculum. We want to know if our objectives were effective, if our methodology worked, and all the aspects of curriculum development. When we talk about assessment, we are specifically talking about measuring, determining, identifying how much students learn. And then we're going to have a variety of tools that could include more traditional or conventional tools such as tests, but there are also an array, a plethora of alternative options. So in the next slide, we have a definition of assessment. So according to Brindley, assessment is an umbrella term encompassing measurement instrument administered on a one-off basis, such as tests, as well as qualitative methods of monitoring and recording the students' learning. Okay, so assessment sometimes is there's a confusion or a misconception that we think that assessment is only tests. Assessment refers to all the different options or alternatives. It might be measurement instruments, but it can also be qualitative. And I like to add another concept from Henry Douglas Brown in the next slide. A good teacher never ceases to assess students, whether those assessments are incidental or intended. So every time, at all times that we are in class, we are assessing our students. We are giving information to our students on how they're doing, how they progress. So these can be incidental or they can be very intentional. The idea is that we learn to do it systematically and that those judgments, those assessments help the process of learning. In the next slide, so one way I mean, there are many distinctions in the types of assessment. Some people talk about formal and informal. Some people talk about traditional and alternative. In this case, we prefer this distinction between summative and formative. And what is the difference? Who does the assessment? In summative assessment is usually the teacher, But in other, especially in many countries, it's common that the local authorities or administrative authorities are in charge of the assessment. If you think, for example, of Prueba Saber, the administrator, the person carrying out that assessment is the Colombian government, the Colombian state, right? The ICFES is not directly the teacher. Formative assessment. Formative assessment is always conducted by the teachers, but also by the students. The students can participate in the process of assessment through peer assessment and self-assessment, as we will see in a few minutes. When does the assessment happen? Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Well, summative assessment happens at specific times. There's one-off, as said the previous quote. So for example, we have a midterm, we have a final test, we have a short assessment or short tests at the end of each unit in our program. Formative assessment is ongoing. It's happening all the time and doesn't have specific periods or specific points in which it may happen. What for? Summative assessment usually happens for informing the decision-making process. And these are very instrumental decisions. Decision on who gets promoted to the next level, who passes or fails the class, okay? But formative assessment has a different purpose. Its purpose is to improve instruction and to help students internalize the type of feedback or the type of information that we provide. Of course, that can also inform decision making, but it works at a different level. And how these two types of assessment happen? So summative assessment usually happens through grades, right? We assign numbers of values to students' performance or to student knowledge. Formative assessment emphasizes comments and comprehensive descriptions of a student's performance, weaknesses, and opportunities for learning. Now, in the next slide, Yuri, thank you. We have the principles of assessment, whether it's formative, whether it's summative, whether it's a large test, whether it's a class presentation, assessment has to meet these 4 principles, especially for language learning. And it doesn't matter if it is, you know, face-to-face, paper-based, or through technology, you have to make sure you have these different principles. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think reliability means, or what it refers to? So if you please raise your hands, and I'll give you a chance to comment, to tell us what you think. Anybody? Or you can write through the chat. Okay. So what do you think? Thank you, Carolina. What is reliability? When we're talking about a test, a quiz, a presentation, what do we mean when we say that it must be reliable?
Could I speak?
Yes, yes.
Hi. I think that reliability refers to whether the test content is a reflection of the content that the student has studied or has gone through.
Okay. When there's a reflection or a correspondence between the content in the class and the type of test or assessment. Okay, thank you. What about practicality? Can anyone help me tell me what do you think practicality means? Odair, yes? You're raising your hand? No, you're not.
We have some other answers in the chat, teacher.
Yes. Okay, total practice. John Anderson Artiaga says that reliability is when you can trust on the results. Helmer says that yes, reliability is trust. Okay, good. We have some answers in there. Germán Gonzalez, the possibility to make the assessment of what it is intended for. Great. Okay, good opinions. So let's see the, let's say, formal definitions of each of these principles in the next slide. Okay, so practicality. And any type of assessment or any test or quiz is practical when it's feasible, when it's doable, according to the available resources. And these imply that it's time efficient, cost effective, and easy to administer, right? So if you think, for example, if you have 200 students and you want your students to write essays, okay? So, well, that's relatively easy to do, right? You give your students a piece of paper, I will prompt, they need a pencil, they can write an essay. However, if then you have to read and grade all 200 papers, it's gonna take you hours and hours and hours, right? So practicality refers to that. How much time, how much money, how many resources am I going to need in order to administer or to use this technique or instrument of assessment, okay? So practicality is going to change or depend very much of the resources that you have available. You have a large teacher staff, a large group of teachers, and you can, you know, share the grading and the correction process, then these kind of essay questions is going to be practical. But if you are the only teacher doing the grading, the scoring, then that's going to be too time consuming for you. Okay? Reliability. Reliability refers to consistency and dependability of results. So as many of you were commenting in the chat, yes, a test or any technique, assessment technique is reliable when it produces consistent results. And when you can trust that those results are the product of the student's knowledge and not of other conditions. So for instance, if you have a listening quiz and you have group A and group B, group A has an excellent, you know, multimedia lab with large speakers and the room is soundproof. But group B, it's in a traditional classroom. It has, you know, it has the street right in front of it, and there is the mazamorra and the avocado selling during the quiz, and the teacher only has like a small, you know, CD player. So the difference between group A and group B is not going to be because of their ability, but because of the conditions. So there are not reliable results. If you switch the students from one environment to the other, then group B will get better results probably than group A. So Reliability means that you can control the conditions of the test so that you can be sure that you can trust those results. All right? Validity. Validity refers to the consistency between what is assessed and how it is assessed. Okay? If I want to test a person's ability to speak, I have to ask them to speak, right? If I want to test a person's ability to understand the text, they have to read the text and show me that they understand it. So that is what validity refers. It's very common that, unfortunately, sometimes we use grammar questions to assess writing. Grammar and writing are related, but they are not the same. If you're assessing if you're assessing writing, you need people to produce a meaningful text, not only answer grammar questions. And authenticity refers to the correspondence between assessment and real-life language use. And this is one of the most difficult principles to meet, but we want people to learn a language in order to use it in real life, not just to answer classroom questions. To the extent that we can assure that any assessment technique is authentic, we can be partially sure that what they do in the test, they can do it in real life. If our assessment, whether a test, whether a role play, etc., are too artificial, the results that we get might be limited only to classroom situations and may not be applicable or may not be transferable to any other language use situation. So let's see. In the next slide. This idea by Nation and McAllister. The requirements of practicality and reliability do not always agree with each other. For example, short tests are practical, but not very reliable or valid. So we have to meet these principles, but the truth is that fulfilling all of them, it's really hard, right? So some, as Nation and McAllister point out, while some type of tests or questions might be very practical because they are, inexpensive to produce, easy to grade, very fast to administer and to grade, they're probably not very reliable or they're probably not very valid. So we always have to try to find a balance. Try to put all of them, in a notch and see that at least a minimum level of acceptability is reached for each of them. The other thing is that whenever we have our language course or a language class, we have to make sure that we combine different techniques. Some of them will be more practical. Some of them have to be very, very valid. Others have to be very, very reliable. So we have to combine in order to achieve a balance between all of them. But it's not an easy task. So let's see. Let's have our first activity. Right there on the screen, you have a link, right? And Giri is going to send you the link also through the chat. I'm going to open the... Okay, there you have it. And it's a questionnaire that says assessment. In this questionnaire, let me help you read the instruction. You're seeing it right now, but please access it from the link in the chat, please. We have, read the following situations. Check the column of the principle of assessment that is negatively affected by either the type of assessment and its conditions. For example, if you are administering a test for 200 students, each student will be required to write 2 long essays in the test, and you are the only to check and score the 400 essay. In this example situation, practicality is negatively affected because scoring will take too long and will be too demanding. Also, reliability might be affected negatively because one rater might rate the first 20 essays differently from the last 20 due to tiredness. In some situations, you might click on more than one column, okay? So if you scroll down, you're gonna see the different situations. For example, to assess students, right, for example, the first one. To assess students' writing competence, you ask them to match if clause with consequent clauses and then copy the resulting sentences. So what is the problem there? Is it a problem of practicality? Is it a problem of validity? Or is it a problem of reliability? So you just please answer them. I think we can take 5 minutes to complete that, and then we'll see what were your answers. So I'm going to turn off my camera for a second. Could you access the link? Do you have any problems? Okay, everyone. So time's up. I know. I know it was not much time, but well, we had to continue. All right, so I'm going to share my screen as well. Um, okay, now here we have the situations of what were the problems. For example, in the first one, you are everyone can see the screen, right? Okay. So if you're administering a listening quiz in your classroom, you play the audio from a CD player in the front desk, in the sport course of the school right now, right in front of your classroom, there is an ongoing football match. So that is going to affect reliability. You cannot trust those results because for sure the results of the quiz will be different if you give the test at a time when there is no soccer match, okay? To test your student pragmatic knowledge, you administer a multiple choice quiz in which students have to choose the best response to greetings, apologies, excuses, and invitations. The test has 60 questions. So there, what is affected or the problem with that is validity, because pragmatic knowledge, it's very difficult to measure or to detect with multiple choice questions, okay? I mean, you need to provide enough context and enough additional information of the relationship between the speakers in order for the questions to be valid, to actually determine the students' pragmatic knowledge. To assess pronunciation, you ask your 8th grade students to provide the phonetic transcription of one of the dialogues from their textbook. Again, the problem there is validity, right? The fact that a student knows how to transcribe in phonetic symbols doesn't really mean that the students can actually pronounce correctly. To assess the speaking ability of your students, you decide to interview them individually. The interview is conducted in an office, not in the classroom, and students wait in line outside. As they answer the questions, you take notes, but you did not audio record them, okay? And there, what is probably affected is both validity and reliability. Whenever you have this type of interviews or oral assessment, the best way to guarantee the reliability of the results and to make sure that they are valid is if you record them. And later on, when we start talking about technology, that's one of the advantages that students now have the possibility of recording themselves or videotaping themselves. Well, to assess reading comprehension, you ask your students to record themselves as they read aloud. That's validity. Reading aloud does not really measure or determine reading comprehension. It may be excellent for pronunciation, even for some phonemic awareness, but it's not really or not necessarily reading comprehension. Students role play a doctor-patient dialogue they create with their own ideas. You don't have a rubric for scoring, but you give a grade based on your personal enjoyment. That may affect both practicality and reliability, okay? Because if you don't have a clear rubric, if you don't have clear criteria to assign the grades, so you might get unreliable results. You might be given to students with very similar performance, very different grades. It's very important to have clear criteria or clear parameters to assess different students. Just, well, this is the first example that we read, and it refers to assess writing with a, a matching exercise of between the if clause and the consequence clause. Well, that's validity because there, what you are assessing is grammatical knowledge, not really writing. This example, you have 45 students in your high intermediate French class. Every week, students have to write 1 page, long journal, reflecting, etc. That is very valid. That's it's very interesting. It's a great activity, but it's not very practical. Okay, if you have too many students and each of them is going to have a journal, and you have to read and detail, comment in detail each of the entries of their journal. It's going to be too time consuming. Chinese whispers to assess listening comprehension, validity. That it's more, that's a fun game, it's an excellent classroom activity. You can see their students' performance in many different things like pronunciation, teamwork, but it's not really fair for assessing listening comprehension. And finally, in a class of 42 students, you assign each to prepare an oral presentation on a topic of their choice. Well, they give you all the details. It's very valid. If you have 2 people to average the grade, it might be very reliable. But in 42 students, it might be very impractical. Again, too time consuming and very difficult to actually carry out, okay? However, remember, this is like general measures or general criteria, but actually all of them are going to depend to some extent to your context, okay? Especially practicality. So after this activity, let's move quickly, because we're almost over with the first hour, through language testing. So a test is an instrument for measuring language ability or linguistic ability, basically. So we tend to idealize tests, but tests are basically instruments, okay? And they have to do that. They have to measure language ability. Now, a common mistake is of test is what we think of them, right? We usually think that only multiple choice questions are tests. Tests can be objective tests or performance based tests. Objective tests, basically, they have questions or items, and each item taps into an aspect of knowledge or ability at a time. So each question is for measuring one specific linguistic aspect, okay? They are usually close-ended. There's going to be only one correct answer and no more. And performance-based test is used to measure different complex ability. It's usually more for measuring skills, and they judge the student of knowledge based on his performance. So a student has to demonstrate, to perform, to use language ability in order to be assessed. Well, so when we talk about closed-ended questions and open-ended questions, so the typical closed-ended questions are multiple choice questions, matching, completion, a close, cue response. You know, when you have a picture and the students have to describe the picture or to write a word or to write a sentence based on the picture or based on an input text. And then open-ended questions involve writing essays, participating in interviews, storytelling, or retelling of a text or a video. And well, this is a typical question that everybody is familiar with, right? This is taken from a website. So I am sure I would have regretted it if I to take the job. And then you have 4 options. Okay, so what happens with technology is that administering this type and creating this type of tests and quizzes is very easy, and it's very practical when you do it on the computer. So let's see another example. Yes. Now here we have an example of a quiz. Well, it's actually a test. There, please, you don't have to write your real name if you don't want to. Class, you can write any class you want to, like, you know, 10th grade, group 4, etc. And I don't want you to answer the test, okay? I just want to take a look at it. In fact, I'm going to give you just 10 minutes. You take a look. If you want, you can answer 2 or 3 questions just to see. And after that, we're going to have a short conversation about the test. So Yuri just shared the test in the chat for you to access. Remember, it's just for you to take a look. And I'll give you 10 minutes. And after that, we will have a short conversation about what do you think of this test? What are its advantages, its strong points, and its weaknesses? Okay, everybody. Well, remember, since of course it is not that you take the test, it's just that you take a look. So maybe it's been enough time, right? Okay, so I'd like you to write in the chat, or if you want, just turn on your microphone and tell me what you think of that test. What advantages, what problems do you think it would be adequate for your class? Okay, here we have a comment from Hector Torres. He says, I think forms is the safest if you don't have access to a learning management system, something like Moodle, for example. Okay, so if you don't have a controlled platform, for Hector is one of the safest options. Somebody else, any other comment? Would anyone like to say something? Okay, I really like Janeth Mosquera. I really like the quiz because it checks different skills in a very nice way. Google Form has different ways to present activities. Right, Erica, I find practicing listening, vocabulary, and reading, but as a teacher, I find it difficult to grade the writing. All right. Angie, this is a useful tool for the classes, and we can evaluate the English skills. Somebody else, please. Javier, cool. You organize activities in different forms and stages. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so yes, what I want you to see is that, or the goal of showing this test is that your test has to have variety. It has to have it has to be made in a way that is visually appealing or visually friendly. The instructions have to be very, very clear. And do not abuse multiple choice questions. I mean, there are different ways to show or present the questions. Now, one advantage of this is that, of course, Google Forms was designed originally for creating surveys, questionnaires, you know, like, oh, we have another comment. I'll read it in a minute. It has, so, you know, like this, well, the attendance list is created in Google Form. The evaluation list that you will fill in at the end is in Google Form. So that was its objective. But now it has this option or this application that allows you to convert your questionnaire or your survey into a quiz. So you can program the different questions and you can program them with the correct answer. So it can give feedback to the student. You can program it in a way that the students don't see the answers, or you can set it in a way that students will get immediately the answers, okay? So they are very practical, very efficient, very fast. But as Luzma, I think it was Luzma, let me read some of them. Yes, Rafael Nunez says, I think it is very practical and easy to grade. I think it shows a wide variety of testing techniques. Alberto, Luzma, great, very useful to improve our student skills. It's interesting because you can evaluate different English skills, great. But I think one of the one of the comments that I saw there said, what about the writing? And that's one of the problems. The computer is not going to grade or correct the writing for you, okay? I mean, so with the multiple choice questions, with the matching or the different options, even if it's writing just a word, you can set the correct answer and the computer or the software, actually not the computer anymore, will grade it for you. But when it comes to real performance tests, you have to do the grading, okay? So that's very important. But all these mechanical parts, yes, you can leave it to the software, and you have to make sure that it's well set up, that it's well programmed, so you can really trust the software to do it for you. But when it comes to performance tests, if you're going to ask students to write, your students to write an essay, to record a role play, etc., the computer or the software can help you collect that. It can help you store that, but it's you who's going to have to do the grading. Okay, it's you, with your knowledge, with your experience, who's going to say it's correct or not. Okay, and that, but it's important that we give a variety of tests and not only tests. Okay, so you can use tests. Computer and software makes it easier to use, but we cannot rely only on them. So, Yuri, if you could please see the next slide. So, Google Form is very accessible. You only need a Gmail account. It's very easy. Unfortunately, because of time, I will not be able to show you how to create those questions, but it's really, really easy, really intuitive. But it's not the only option. We have Summative, we have Class Marker, we have quizzes, we have puzzle, we have quiz maker. All of those options and many more can help you create quizzes and tests online. For example, quizzes, it's similar to Kahoot, so you can do the test, you know, synchronically. I mean, students have to be taking all the tests at the same time, in the same moment, and they can see the results. And you can set it as a kind of competition with time, and that. So that's just to take a look, right? That's one of the options. If you see, for example, Edpuzzle is excellent. It's not only for quizzes and tests. Actually, you can create different type of activities, especially with videos. So you can convert a video into a lesson, and of course, you can convert a video into a quiz. So the questions will be inserted within the video. But for most of us, probably Google Forms is the more adequate because it's, as I said before, it's very accessible, very easy to use. You already have it, okay? But yes, there are many other options. And when you get the grasp or the understanding of how to make a question in one of the platforms, usually it's very similar in all the other different alternatives. So if we see the next slide, I apologize if I'm going too fast, but we really want to move to the next part. Well, now I'm going to show you a question. How would you rate a web-based test according to the principles of assessment? Okay, so if Yuri shows you, we have like a little chart there. Okay, we have reliability, practicality, validity, and authenticity. So we have the smiley face, we have this kind of doubtful face, and we have the angry face. So if you think, for example, in your opinion, that if you think that, for example, a computer test or a web-based test is not valid, so your choice would be the angry face, right? If you're not sure whether it's practical or not, then you use this doubtful face. But if you're very sure that a test can be a authentic. So you just put the smiley face. So in the chat, you can just write, for example, reliability and the emoji or the emoticon that you think best represents your opinion. So I'm just going to give you 2 minutes to send your comments in the chat, and then I'll show you some possible answers. Okay, 2 minutes this time, because I think this is very easy. You just say if you think it's very reliable, not reliable, or if you're not sure. And well, while you complete that, let me read some of the comments that I didn't have the chance. We have here, I am learning how to do virtual tests in Google Forms. Could you help me, please? Sure, Adriana, but maybe you can send me an email after the presentation. I think the police is coming for me. Diana, they are very useful and practical. I have used similar ones in my classes. Forms is a great resource. Adriana, our students can develop different skills. Delia, I like the assessment because the students have the opportunity to demonstrate what they understand in various ways. And well, Jury is reminding us that you will have the presentation, and the presentation have it's going to be in PDF format, and it has all the links to the different tools, so you can check them and as we say here, cacharrearlos. Okay, so no one is sending answers. You can do something like this, for example. No, I think. Okay, great, Alberto. Alberto is replying there. He says he thinks that they are very reliable, very practical. Gladys, the links to the Socrative and all those applications, they will be in the presentation. We will share it at the end of today's webinar. Sorry, I had some background noise. Well, so we will send you the presentation with the links. And the presentation will also be available in the website of the Chamber of Commerce. So Alberto was saying that yes, computer-based or web-based assessment, it's very reliable and very practical. Okay. Let's see the possible answers. Could you show them? Jury, please. Okay. So reliability. And why isn't in the doubtful guide, in the I don't know if it's reliable? They are reliable because yes, they do produce consistent results. If you did your job well, if you have programmed and written good questions and very clear options, and you have the right answer, the right answer key, they are going to give you very consistent results and very reliable results. But we have a problem today. The problem is, how can I assure that the person who took the test is actually the student? So that's a problem. They would be very reliable, but they also give a lot of space, a lot of room for cheating. Okay, so that's a big problem. So you can trust the test, but unfortunately, sometimes you cannot really trust some of your students. What is the option for that then? What do we do? Then again, you can use web-based tests, but you have to make sure that you have other options for assessment that are not only tests, okay? That you can combine them with other alternatives. Another option, of course, is to develop a sense of commitment with the learning. Okay, the students have to value the class for the learning itself and not just for the grade. And even you can use tests or quizzes without any grade. I mean, there's going to be a score at the end, but not only tell the students that the score is going to be everything. That in fact, you can use a test in a more formative way. Practicality, yes, they are very practical. It's easy to write the questions in the platform. The test delivers the questions. For these close-ended questions, you can just set the answer key and they grade them. So that test that I just gave you, I can have the results in minutes, in seconds. I won't spend 3 hours checking them. Well, I will have to read the essays, right? But at least for all the close-ended questions, it's very, very practical. Validity, again, it depends. It's going to depend. But those problems with the validity of these tests do not depend on the technology itself. I mean, they have the same validity issues that they would have if they were in a paper-based, yes, in a paper-based format. And authentic, again, it depends. It depends on how you create the question. And it's not going to depend on the platform. It's not going to depend on the web. It's not going to depend on the internet. You can create, if you are very creative, you can create situations and questions with a context, something that resembles real life. Or you can have the very traditional questions that are unrealistic, that are artificial. So before we move, let's read some comments. Quickly, Janet. Yes, one of my concerns is that on this distance learning, the student can use other tools when they are doing the test. So I'm not sure about reliability, just what we said, right? Unfortunately, we cannot trust some of our students all the time. Well, some platforms, especially, they have some security but usually those are the ones that you have to pay for, and we are not into paying for those kind of services, right? But yeah, it's a big concern. As I said before, try to combine with other alternatives. Don't give too much percentage only to tests. Web-based, Germán, web-based tests are practical, but not always reliable. Validity depends on the teacher. Excellent, just what we said, right? Okay, yes, that's a problem. Sometimes they don't cheat in the sense that they ask a friend to complete the test for them, or that they look up for the answers. But yes, they use translators. That's a problem. And yes, well, and as just as we said, validity and authenticity, and just as the comment we just read, it depends more on the teacher. The web is not going to make it less or more valid or less or more authentic. It is you when you create it. So Yuri, can we take a look at the next slide, please? So when you create a test, there is a process. You have to have clear, unambiguous objectives. So, well, I want this test, whether it's objective or performance-based, to measure my students' ability to greet in formal situations, to measure my students' ability to describe physical and personality characteristics of people. So the objectives have to be very clear. You have to draw up the test specifications. Is what is like an outline or a map of the structure of the test, the number of questions, the characteristics of the questions. Devising tasks, then you have to determine, okay, well, I'm going to have some multiple choice questions, but I'm also going to have open-ended questions, and I'm going to have a true or false question, etc. Then you write the items, you revise them, and you pilot them. Unfortunately, because of time, we rarely pilot our tests. We just write them and give them. So whenever you have a chance, try to pilot your test. Ask a colleague to answer the test. Ask students from your last year, for example, if you're teaching 8th grade and your students are in 9th grade, ask 3 or 4 of them that you have a good relationship to answer a test. If you are, I don't know, a cousin, a niece, a nephew, ask them to take the test. So that's piloting, trying it out. Now, these principles, they apply both for paper-based or web-based, or even if you're writing the test on the board, is the same, right? You have to make sure that you have clear objectives, good questions, and that you pilot and try your questions. No, sorry. Well, because of time, Yuri, let's keep the following 4 slides, please. I'm sorry, everyone, but we don't want the webinar to be only about tests. Next to, anyway, you're going to have the complete presentation, and then in the presentation, you will have those slides. They are very, I would say, basic. Well, Anna says, yes, revising and piloting is very important. Gladys, it depends on how you create the questions to prove that really the students are doing the test. Good tip, Gladys. Yes. And that's another thing. We can have tests that are not so close-ended. I mean, close-ended is good because it's easy to have an answer key and to have a fast rating. But if you have open-ended, it's more difficult for the students to cheat. Let's keep that one too, Yuri. I'm sorry. I really like to be. Oh, Yuri's going back. There. And finally, when we have performance assessment, we need to have, so we have, remember, like writing an essay, an open-ended question, or an oral presentation, or role play. All that is going to be performance assessment. In this case, the student performance is going to be more a technique. And the instrument as such is going to be either a checklist or a rating scale. A checklist is basically a list of descriptors of the student's performance in which you check simply yes or no, okay? And a rating scales is a way of describing the student performance through different levels of performance or criteria of quality. So rating scales can be analytic or holistic. In the next one, so a rubric, according to Brookhart, a rubric is a coherent set of criteria for students. For students' work that includes descriptions of level of performance and quality on the criteria. So usually you're going to have different criteria. You're going to have some standards, and where the criteria and the standard cross, you have to write a description of what you expect the student to do. And usually these standards or levels, they go from the best expected performance to the worst possible performance. Yes, Jennifer. In performance-based assessment, any productive skills, rubrics are excellent. This is an example of a holistic rubric. So you have the levels. In this case, they are presented as scores, and then you have a holistic description of the performance for each grade. And the next one is an example of an analytic rubric. So for example, here you have the standards or the scales. The scales are excellent, competent, needs work. And you have the different criteria, knowledge, thinking, communication, use of visual aids, presentation. And as I told you, where the scale and the criterion combine in that cells, you have to write a description of the expected performance. Next one. How you do that? Well, first you have to choose the type of rubric that you want to use. You have to decide whether you want to use a holistic one or analytic one. Remember, in the holistic, you gave a general description of all of the performance, and then in analytic, you decompose it by different elements. So if it's writing, you may have criteria for clarity, another for grammar, another for spelling, and so on. In a holistic, you will have all together a description of what a good piece of writing in this category is. Well, you identify those criteria that you want to use. You identify and name the number of standards that you want to use, right? If you want to go from excellent to poor, to outstanding to needs work, if you want to have 3 or 4 or 5, you develop the descriptor. So what is excellent performance in coherence? What is excellent performance in spelling? You have to have a scoring strategy. So because not any rubric is completely perfect. So you have to see, well, if something is in between excellent and good, what do? Do I give them a full score? Do I give them, score with decimals? And then in the last option, review and revise, okay? And then again, teamwork. If you can have colleagues to check it, if you can, if you already have samples of the student performance and try it out with that before actually using it. And those suggestions are from O'Neill. We are not going to look at the sample. I think we already looked at one. And the good thing here is that you can create rubrics online. There are also software that allow you to create your rubric. These are 3 options: Quick Rubric, Rubric Maker, and Rubric. And there are 100 more. And they are based on this procedure that I just told you, right? You enter, you create a user, they are completely free, and they ask you what are the standards, what are the criteria. They give you automatic options, right? For example, if you have an essay, they give you the criteria and even the standards, but they also give you the chance to change them, to edit them. But because a rubric that is created by a software might not work for your students, you need to then again, the validity depends on you as a teacher. Next, okay, and the next part is formative assessment. Briefly, so we can have at least a half an hour. Formative assessment is about evaluating the students in the process of forming their competencies and skills with the goal of helping them to continue that growth process. So we've been talking about summative assessment. We want to know if students can pass or not. But here, what we want is students to understand their own learning and to be empowered in that process. So right now, so Judy is going to continue with different options and alternatives in formative assessment. Thank you very much. I don't know, Judy, should we switch and I'll share my screen and you give the talk, or what do you prefer?
No, I think I can continue here so we don't spend more time on that. Good, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some important concepts about formative assessment. This formative assessment, of course, it's something kind or slightly different from a summative assessment. let's say that this is a process, yes, and this is a participation-based process, yes. Here, as it says in this quote, which I am going to repeat for a moment, the teacher Carlos already read it, but I am going to read it again for you because I want to highlight some of the most important parts that I found here. And it says that evaluating the students in the process of forming their competencies, and I am highlighting the process, okay? Because you need to recognize that the summative assessment, it's usually done at the end of the process, yes? And here, formative assessment is like carried out during the process of learning something, yes? Like the students are learning a lesson or learning a topic, and during that lesson, yes, and during the process of learning, you are constantly asking questions, trying to find out if your students are understanding, if they have questions, if probably you have to change the strategy that you are using to teach so they can understand in a better way what you are teaching to them. Yes, so it's very important that we have that in mind. Yes, that the process in the formative assessment is really important, okay? So as we were saying, competencies are also very important. Here, in the summative assessment, the teacher Carlos mentioned that objectives are very important, yes. Here, the most important is, of course, is the objective, but that is like the last step. But before you meet the objective, you have to accomplish with some competencies, yes, and to get some skills. So that's why here it's very important that we recognize that competencies, skills are a very important part of formative assessment tool in a formative assessment as well. And it's also important that you know that you do this to help your students to continue growth that process. Yes, it is a tool. It is a sequence of steps that you follow, so you make sure that your students are learning, that your students are understanding, and so it's very important that you see that more like a support, yes, than just that you are evaluating or that you are just getting information from your students to check if they are correct or they are wrong. Yeah, so that is something that it's that I wanted to highlight. Well, there are several ways in which you can carry out this formative assessment. And I'm going to talk more about the tools because, you know, I really like to explore different tools in which you actually can do this with your students. So you can follow the process. You can find in the during the different stages of the class what they think, what they want to do, what they prefer to do, what they don't like to do. Yeah, so during that process, it's a very enriching process because you grow as a teacher as well because you start recognizing your students' needs. Okay, so that is very important. What are some ways or what are some tools that we can use in order to carry out that formative assessment process in our classes? For example, we can start doing or creating e-portfolios, yes? Some tools that you can use to create e-portfolios are Seesaw, Google Drive, Mahara Portfolio. Yes, those are online tools. Yes, of course, you can create also portfolios that are not online. Yes, let's say physical portfolios in which your students create a log. They have to write something, draw. Yes, they have to do something like on paper, and then they have to keep like all the record of everything that they have done during a specific process. So it's good because actually portfolios let you know the process, yes, of what your students have been learning during a specific task, let's say, or project. Usually it's also portfolios. You can use them for projects. So that's something that you can use, yes? So you can complement projects with e-portfolios because, as I mentioned before, it matches perfectly the strategy of the formative assessment, which is like create a path, follow some steps, and keep track of that process of the students, okay? Learning process. Also peer assessment or self-assessment. It's very important that we understand that we as teachers, yes, we need to evaluate the students, but that we don't have like the complete power of the class, yes? That sometimes it is very necessary that also like your students can help with that process of evaluation. And actually when you try to do that, you will see that they are very judgmental as well, let's say, that they are very critical. Yes, that they sometimes they are like raw with the comments that they do, but the comments are like, let's say, true. They are sincere. Yeah, sometimes we don't use those kind of comments on students' work, but since they are peers, let's say that they have more, they feel more confident on doing that. So peer assessment is important. So there is one tool that I want to suggest you to do that, and it's peer grade. Yes, it's a pity that we can't show you that now, but as I said before, you will get the presentation and there you will find the links. In peer grade, you can use like a small platform in which you will ask a specific question to students, or you will upload students' work, and then it the tool randomly like assign the activities to different students, so they have to do that peer assessment. Okay, so peer grade, it's a good tool to do that. Then we have the self-assessment, also very important because it is a process in which you can reflect on your own work. Yes, you can say like, yes, I have done this in a good way, or it's better if I improve this part, or next time I'm going to put more attention on this specific section. Yeah, so it's important because it's like not many times students have the opportunities of doing the self-assessment on a specific activity. Yes, usually self-assessment, what I have heard from schools is that they have a self-assessment like on the, I don't know, the complete period, durante el periodo de estudio, yes, and at the end they say, yes, I did it good or I did it wrong, and that's it. Yes, I give me a 3, give me a 2, and that's what I give to myself. But this is self-assessment is more like a reflection process, and hey, sit down, check it, take a look at what you did, and try to find some ways in which you can improve this, or check some ways in which probably you can change the answers that you gave to this activity, or anything that you want to ask them to do, so they can do that reflection process. Observation of learning. Very important. I think that we as teachers must be observers like all the time. And in formative assessment, it's very important that you observe your students, because the idea with the formative assessment, and I repeat this, is that when you observe your students, the way that they are learning, the things that they like, the things that they don't like doing. Yes, like I see that my students prefer doing this kind of activities than those that I did the last class, or that I proposed the last session, or something like that. Then yes, and then you observe, and you can improve the way in which you teach your students, and based on those needs, yes, based on the likes, based on those dislikes, and of course, learning is going to be more effective. And the last tool here, it's about blogs and reflective journals, yes, in which actually you can use very good tools for that, which are Wix, Weebly, and EduBlogs, for example. Those are used usually to also to create projects, yes, like to show the result of some projects. You can use blogs and reflective journals also as in the way that you use the e-portfolios as well, okay? So that is very important. So that's very important too. Those are the tools that you can use. Those are the tools that I wanted to share with you. So probably you can make the most of it during your classes. Okay, I'm going to, okay. I have here something that I want to share with you. and I am going to send it right away because I think this is going to be very useful. It's one of the tools that I think I didn't mention it before, but it's to create polls. Yes, and polls are actually one of
Judy,
the
I already
great.
sent it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
great. Thank
yes.
you. So good, thank you, teacher. So that is very, very useful because I don't know if you have used polls in the class. They are good because you don't grade them. Yes, it's just people telling what they think, or students telling what they think, and you are not going to grade them. You are not going to judge them. Yes, because it's their opinion. It's what they think it's the most important aspect is when they provide information about what they think that something must be done. So that there are different ways in which you can ask your students to create a poll. It is very important, for example, that you use the poll at the beginning of the class. Yes, so you can ask some questions about the lesson. Yes, like activating prior knowledge. Yeah, so what do you know about this topic? Do you really like, I don't know, if you're going to talk about food, like what do you think about healthy food? Do you usually eat healthy food? And as you can see, those are just personal questions, yes? But those questions are going to be very useful later on when you start your class and when you start telling them like the specific uh, content of the class, okay? So I think that you have like a couple of minutes to check the link, to know especially to know the tool, okay? And then I will back to you in 1 minute. So if you see this in your screen, the question is, rank the following aspects in order of importance based on your teaching practice. If you click on the item, yes, you can use the arrows to move it, yes, like up or down. And when you are happy with the organization, you just click submit response, and that's it, okay? Great. So this is the way in which you can see the results of the poll. Yes. So for most of you, and I'm sorry, probably some of you haven't finished with the responses, but I am going to do it again. Okay. So it says that for most of you, it's very important to improve your teaching practices based on your student needs. That's great, yes. In the second place is to keep a record of the expectations. It's important for you to keep a record of the expectations and motivations of my students towards the class. Great. Here it is, they are fighting the second place. Yes, it's also the third item here. It says to provide feedback. Okay, it is in the third place now. To provide feedback in different stages of the class. Yes. Oh, now it changed to the second place. And the last one is to provide a score to my students. Very good. If we are going to talk about formative assessment, the score is not the most important thing here. Yes, the students' needs are very important. Feedback is highly important here. And to keep a record of the expectations and motivations of your students, as I said before, because they are going to help you with the decisions that you make in order to teach your classes, to make decisions on your lesson plans, to propose specific activities to your students. So that's why all of them are very important. Of course, the score sometimes motivates the students, let's say, but this is not what we want to, like our objective here. Yes, this is not what we want to discover here, like who gets the best score. But we want to know, like, what are their expectations, if they really like what we do, if they are learning actually with what we are doing, and of course, if we are meeting our students' needs, okay? So great, thank you for your participation in the poll. And as you can see, I didn't say that there is a winner or something like that. For me, all of your answers are very important, and this is very important. This is going to be very important for you as well, okay? Good, and let me back to my presentation here. Okay, so I hope that you liked it, and you can use it in your next class, okay? Another quote, and I am going to share this quote because here they mention a very important topic, or Simon mentions a very important topic for me, which is the 21st century skills, the 21st century as the time that in which we have to grow as teachers and as learners as well. So it says that learning environments in the 21st century involve and depend on digital technologies such as the computers, handheld devices, the internet, and whiteboards, just to mention but a few. This means that the purpose of formative assessment has not changed, but rather the significance of formative assessment has grown on account of new technologies and 21st century learning demands. What does it mean? It means that now, or it means for me that now it's easier to carry out this formative assessment in our classes, because think about this. Before, to make a poll, probably you had to count little sticks on your whiteboard, yes? Like, or raise your hand if you think that number one aspect is very important. Yes, that was the way in which you could do like one poll in the past, yes? Or let's say nowadays, but in face-to-face classes, yes? But now you can use poll everywhere, for example, yes? Before, you had to ask your students, hey, you are going, please buy folders so you can keep your different activities there, and we are going to create a portfolio with those worksheets or papers that we are working on. Now you can create an e-portfolio in Seesaw. You can create a Google, you can create a folder in the Google Drive. Yeah, so this means that 21st century and all the digital tools that we have nowadays and all the devices that we have that we can use nowadays, and even now with this situation of the pandemic, we are using a lot of these tools. So as you can see, formative assessment, it's, let's say that it has improved, or it is going to be easier for us as students and as teachers. So it will be easier for us, as I said before, and of course it's going to be a more, we are going to get better results with that in our classes, okay? So keep this in mind. Probably you think that this is true or not. If you can share your thoughts in the chat. But I think it's true, yes, that with the 21st century and with all the technological tools that we have nowadays, it's better and it's easier for us to make formative assessment in our classes, okay? Good. Well, some information that I wanted to share with you as well as the very important formative assessment practices. We have to collect and share learning progress information. Yes, we need to find systematic ways of doing that. So please, if you ask your student to do something, don't discard it. Yes, probably that will be very useful for you in the future to find what your student thought about the activity that you did. Yes, the way that that student did the activity. Yes, if probably your instruction wasn't clear enough, of probably if your instruction was very clear, but anyways the students didn't get it. So what's the thing that I have to improve in that way? So don't discard your students' activities because it is very important, okay? Then provide information used by teachers and learners to make decisions about instruction or learning strategies to improve learning. Yes, and here, make decisions about instruction. And as I mentioned before, during your classes, it's very important that based on those students' answers, students' behaviors, you can improve the way in which they learn or the way in which you teach. Okay, so those behaviors, those answers, all of those activities that you do with them and the information that you collect, probably it will help you to make decisions easier and faster. Okay, and you can change your teaching practices for good. And the last one, it says, serve a range of feedback related purposes for teachers and learners. You can use diagnosis, predictions, and ongoing evaluations, okay? Formative assessment is that. It's an ongoing evaluation, but remember, it's not to score anyone, it's not to find a winner, it's just to find who's learning, in what way that person is learning, and in which way I can improve my teaching practices so that that person or that students can continue learning. Diagnosis is very important too. So you can evaluate your students, yes, to do like a pre-task or a pre-evaluation, and then you can find at the end if actually your students met the objective, yes, and if actually they followed all the instructions that you gave them, and they will be easier for you to identify if they learned or not. Yes, like comparing the results at the end of the lesson and with the diagnosis that you did or that you applied in the beginning of the lesson as well. Okay. Well, I am going to share with you this video later so you can watch it in your computers. It has very interesting information about some tips that you can use in order to give formative assessment in your classes. So since we don't have enough time right now to watch it, I suggest you to watch it so you can find different ways in which you can do this in your classes, and also what are the tools that you can use. Yes, teacher Carlos, but anyways, since this is Zoom, it is going to like it is going to close. So that's why I'm sending you this information. Please, teachers, remember to visit our Instagram, and there in the stories, you will find some questions that you can answer based on everything that we have shared today, okay? So if you want, you can scan this code, okay? And you can answer the questions there. What we wanted to do with this, it was a short discussion, let's say, sharing your thoughts and your ideas, but since we are not going to have much time, please reflect yourself on these topics. They are really important. You will get a lot of good results if you practice this, if you apply everything as we mentioned here. So it's good, okay? So Thank you very much for coming. I will check your answers in the Instagram. I am going to show the code again. These are some extra resources that I am sharing with you. This is these are the references that we used for the presentation. And of course, here you have our emails in case that you have any question or something that you want to share with us. Okay, thank you very much. And don't forget to follow us. We will be sharing more information through our networks. Teacher Carlos?
Thank you, everyone. Sorry that the time ran out. Well, here in the chat is also the file with the presentation, and we will share in both the file and the video with the Chamber of Commerce. They already have a online repository for all these resources. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your nice comments and your participation. And well, I'm sorry for the time management. And thank you, Yuri. Excellent work.
Good. Thank you, teacher. Thank you too. Thank you very much for coming. Hope to see you in the next lab. Okay, we will share that information in our social networks. So please join and you will receive the information directly to your accounts as well.